Disclaimer: story spoilers for Honkai Star Rail up to 3.1, Genshin Impact up to Sumeru, and Madoka Magica, the entirety of the 13-episode anime. Content warning for mention of loss of identity, dementia, and some inappropriate jokes. Viewer discretion is highly advised. Additionally, if you want to know if this video will be a good watch for you or not, I suggest that you answer this question. Do you think Honkai Star Rail needs more male characters? If you said no, then click off the video. This video is not for you. Alright, I was very unimpressed with the 3.0 story and the 3.1 live stream. I even called it mid. You can hear me talk more about it in the video linked above. But the TLDR is, I heavily criticized how Honkai Star Rail likes to create a facade of seriousness in their trailers by conjuring situations that look critical, but they don't actually follow through on any of that. For example, 3.1 trailer shows Phainon stabbing Mydei. After having finished the 3.1 story, I can confirm that literally does not happen. And this terrible pretend of, oh no, Phainon stabbed Mydei, I wonder what's going to happen in the 3.1 story, was. Because of all this, I was ready to scrutinize anything that exasperated all my pre-existing issues with Honkai Star Rail's story. However, the first half of 3.1 story took me by surprise. Look, what I'm describing won't be anything astonishing. This is the basic level of competency I expect from any work of art. But Hoyoverse has consistently failed me on that front, so I'm going to glaze them just a little bit for doing okay. Shall we meet the gentleman who carried this Trailblaze mission? Did I say gentleman? I meant boy. Chapter 1. Mydei and Phainon, the best chemistry in Honkai Star Rail. Honestly, my 3.0 story review is a prerequisite for this video, but I know not everyone has time to watch all my videos. Okay, but seriously, doctors recommend that you watch at least one Chihaku video a day to prevent brain rot, so why don't you give it a go? In my review, I make it very clear that I hate Honkai Star Rail's story. Belobog sucks, Zanzo Laofu sucks, Penacony sucks, every major story arc has sucked. The story sucks more than Mydei deep finance every day. Same thing for Amphorius. Nothing special, but they nailed one thing. Phainon and Mydei. So let's address the elephant in the room. Phainon and Mydei, they're bait. They are, I'm just Alhaitam's roommate, gay. I'm just a pretty gambler and I want Dr. Ratio to play with me, gay. To me, they are totally behind the statue of Nikador every night, so I will not allow any dissenting opinions on the matter. Anyways, the reason why the chemistry between these two is so good is because individually, the characters are superb on their own. But I will talk more about that in the next part of the video. On the surface, their interactions are thinly veiled with competitiveness, but as the story proceeds, we start to see what's underneath. For example, Mydei trusting both Phainon and Trailblazer enough that he was able to be vulnerable while talking to the lion statue, and Phainon intentionally parting with Mydei to give him space to revisit his homeland at his own pace. I really, really loved these bits. As I've demonstrated above, Phainon and Mydei's interactions are not only adorable, but reveal a lot about both parties. That Mydei is a deeply emotional, kind soul despite the way he presents himself. That Phainon, despite being playful and giving off a friendly vibe, is quite reserved with himself and his thoughts. It doesn't mean that he's cold-hearted. Actually, he's incredibly thoughtful and caring, but rather he seems guarded with his emotions because he bears the destiny of a hero who will save the world. Fortunately, their relationship is further elaborated in 3.1. The hot bath competition, adorable. I really loved how Phainon was pointing at Mydei as if he were the culprit, quote unquote, who killed him. The goofy side of both of these parties really enhanced the story by juxtaposing their duties as flame chasers with what a bunch of silly gooses they are. Maybe if the world wasn't falling apart, I know for sure that they would have spent their days goofing around just like this. The entire segment of Mydei trying to cheer up Phainon after he failed Nicodor's test was incredible. Being able to choose dialogue options for Mydei and him attempting to make kind, empathetic, caring comments only to back down from it reminded me why games are so potent. Interactability is such a powerful narrative tool. Good job, Hoyo. 100 out of 100 on this particular segment. Additionally, the way Phainon and Mydei opens up to each other in 3.1 was pretty organic. Friendships are something you need to work on, and being vulnerable can bring people together. Phainon failing the test created a perfect setup for him and Mydei to have a heart-to-heart. The only complaint I have about this whole ordeal is that it's such a shame that Honkai Star Rail does not take advantage of Dan Heng's presence in Amphorius. Dan Heng has been chased by Blade for years. Blade, the borderline crazy guy who remembers almost nothing about himself and the past, relentlessly chased him without even knowing why he's doing so. I know Dan Heng is reserved and he doesn't really like to comment on other people's circumstances, but considering Phainon is struggling with his duty as a flame chaser and his personal revenge, I find it a little bit odd that he's not actively included in the story. I don't know. Stoic Dan Heng breaking his silence to talk about how revenge is poison for the soul, citing Blade's relentless and pointless hunt for him would have been awesome. But I guess I'm the only one who thinks that. Let's move on. Chapter 2. Mydei is probably the best written character in the entire game. Mydei, as the heir of Kremnos, must uphold and honor, quote-unquote, strife. His history, tradition, and his people all demand he comply with the strict definition of what it means to be a Kremnoan. However, Mydei is simply unable to reconcile his own conflicting beliefs and the expectations that are set on him, not because of some arbitrary reason, but because he is a deeply kind soul from every aspect we can see. We see from the extended illustrated segments of how he deeply regrets being the sole survivor while his comrades died fighting for his honor. It is evident that Mydei does not see value in conflict as an abstract concept, unlike most Kremnoans. Conflict is a means to an end for him, to protect his homeland, to protect his people, to protect his comrades, to fight for his honor, to avenge. And even then, Mydei is unable to grapple with the overwhelming violence and grief brought on to him and his people by the constant chaos of conflict. Unlike other Kremnoans, he cannot justify death and suffering in the name of strife for strife's sake, and feels the need for his people and traditions to change. That's why he abandoned everything, his homeland, his divine calling as the king, and settled his people in Okima. He is afraid that if he were to accept his calling as a demigod of strife, it would cause irreparable harm to his people by throwing them back into the endless cycle of violence of war. Unfortunately, nothing in life is as simple as, thing is bad, me stop doing. Let us recall that Mydei's father attempted to kill Mydei in the name of stopping the cycle of violence and conflict in the Kremnoan royal family. What saved Mydei was his mother fighting for his life, honoring him as the rightful successor. What uplifted him was his friends who put their lives on the line for his honor. What justified his revenge was the Kremnoan tradition of heirs killing their fathers. Because of all this, Mydei cannot help but see the goodness, the honor in people who uphold the traditional Kremnoan way of life. So Mydei exists as a living contradiction. Mydei's internal conflict is engaging. How can it not be? Mydei holds beliefs that are most commonly held by normal, everyday people in our world, that conflict is bad and violence only leads to more violence, grief, and loss. That there is, at the end of the day, no amount of honor that can heal the scars of war. At the same time, the story does not hesitate to invoke how he and many others clearly benefited from the Cremnoan way of tradition and life. Hell, it saved his life and led to Kratos protecting Trinonne. I really appreciate how the game gave compelling reasons why Mydei's attempt to redefine what it means to be Cremnoan should be challenged. So here is where we kind of segue into a topic that I really wanted to cover. Let's talk indigeneity. People of Kremnos basically fled from their homeland due to the war. Many folks who never had the experience of immigrating or taking refuge may not realize how important the land you live on is. But it is very important. It literally defines your culture, what type of food that can be grown, therefore what kind of cuisine is native to you, the climate, the history, etc. Let me give you an example. I'm ethnically Korean. I can speak and write Korean, by the way. One of the things that I love about Korean food is banchan, side dishes in English. Many of these side dishes are all vegetables, either pickled or specially prepared. Why? Many of the vegetables used in these side dishes are originally poisonous, hence they need to be pickled or specially prepared to be eaten. Why do you think that is? Do you think people just love doing extra work because it's fun? No, silly. It's because people had to. Korea is basically 90% mountains. There is a very small section of the country with flat enough land to farm. Additionally, during the Japanese colonial occupation from the early 1910s to the end of World War II, Japan extracted as much wealth as possible from Korea. The Korean people, therefore, had to come up with creative ways of turning toxic plants into something edible. We even have a saying that goes something like this. 똥구멍이 찢어지게 가난하다. So poor that your butthole is ripped apart. Where does this originate? Well, this comes from the fact that many Koreans were extremely impoverished after the Japanese occupation, the Korean War, and IMF financial crisis, and had nothing to eat. So they literally ended up eating tree barks. By the way, tree barks are 1000% cellulose and does not get digested in your gut, meaning it will come out the other end as tree bark, hence the ripped butthole. This is why indigeneity matters. It informs so much about a group of people. Now, imagine from the perspective of a Cremnoan elder. Your king just said that you're never returning to your homeland, and because of this, your culture, your sacred lands, the architecture, the plant and the wildlife, the food you eat, your language, your history, your identity, it's all surgically removed from your physical body because of his decision to not return to Kremnos. Mydei's dilemma, though not strictly about indigeneity, it invokes similar sentiments, and as someone who comes from a background where these topics are so important, I found his whole character arc to be the most compelling in this entire game. In case Mydei's internal struggle was too abstract for some folks, it is soon materialized into a physical one. Kratos condemns Mydei for refusing to become a demigod. Based on our understanding of indigeneity, it is totally understandable why they would have such a negative reaction. Throughout the story, we consistently see his people longing for their homeland. Will that be children playing in Okima or warriors waiting for the days where they can return to the battlefield? One criticism I have of how the conflict is showcased is that it doesn't delve deep into why people want to return and relies on the audience's pre-existing knowledge and biases to fully tell the story. What if the story provided more substantial reasons why people want to return to their homeland? So for the children, they say that they want to return to the homeland because no one will play with them. So they'll change their mind if people will play with them. It sort of kind of undermines the internal conflict. So what I expect or what I want from this is the children to say something like this. I want to go back because I hate the food here, Mom. Can we go back? I don't want to eat. Or how about the elders? The elders are wanting to do a religious ceremony. For example, a funeral, and that funeral requires some very specific tools or sacrifices, such as a wild animal or plants, to be present during the ceremony, but these things are not native to Okima, therefore unavailable. They're only available in Kremnos, etc. If the game showed more concrete examples like this instead of vaguely saying, I just want to go home because it's my home, I think it would have been more compelling. But as it stands now, there are a lot of shallow, insincere dialogues where everyone basically says, I want to go home because tradition. The resolution of Mydei's internal conflict and now the physical conflict with Kratos comes in the form of Mydei acknowledging that his kindness and wishes to respect everyone has caused a standstill that cannot be reconciled. Humans are more averse to a negative outcome due to an action rather than inaction, but Mydei is able to let that fear go and forge a path he deems as worthy. He decides to become a demigod to aid the flame chasers in their journey. He decides to end the royal lineage to set people free from the traditions of the past so that they can redefine their ideals as they fit for the new world to come, so that they no longer will suffer the oceanic amounts of pain, grief, and loss. That he would bear it all instead of them, until the day his people can return to a peaceful Kremnos, even if that isn't something that his people want. Writing compelling characters is hard. Many lack the skill set to write a character without cornering them into being a Mary Sue. Hallmark of great writing is a character with a trait that can be both good or bad depending on the context. Mydei is nice and empathetic and respectful. No one is going to deny that. But his quote-unquote niceness and desire to make everyone happy was the core driver of his internal conflict. Ultimately, he learns to cope with making decisions that he thinks is correct rather than focusing on other people's opinions. He pushes on, ignoring the desires of his people. His faults, quote unquote, are hidden in plain sight and only revealed in certain situations. If I had to give a score to Mydei's story, I would give it a 7. Entertaining, thoughtful, and competent. Now, I know some of you are confused. After writing about it so much and praising it multiple times, it's only a 7? Well, first of all, I expect a lot from the media I consume. Second, I contend that 7 is a great score. 5 is mid, 6 is satisfactory, 7 is good, 8 is great, 9 is awesome, and 10 is a masterpiece. Y'all's scoring system are just skewed. Next question you might have must be, okay, well you said overall score for 3.1 is 6 out of 10. So what's bringing the score down? Well, a good question indeed. Chapter 3, Triple Threat Babies. If I don't put a disclaimer here, I'm going to get flamed. So here's a brief disclaimer. I do not like Tribbie, Trianne, Trinonne, Tribbios, whatever BS. I almost never like these baby characters because of the way that they are written. I also very much dislike Mary Sue's. Therefore, I am incredibly biased. Keep that in mind while watching this segment, though I will contend that all reviews are biased, and any reviewer saying that they are objective is a fraud. Anyways, I guess I have to start with why these sorts of characters bother me so much. Often, otaku-oriented games feature characters that are significantly older than they present. You can call it whatever you want, but the most degenerate way to refer to this is basically a legal lolly. Are you starting to feel why I'm very uncomfortable with this archetype yet? There are non-creepy reasons to why
an artist or a writer would feature this archetype. It might be that they want to create a character where their youthful appearance is in contrast to their worldly experience. I think this is what Genshin Impact was going for with Nahida. She's supposed to be the archon of wisdom, knowledge, and life. Nahida's Japanese voice actor does an awesome job of conveying this sort of juxtaposition. She sounds mature and almost inhuman, which she is. She's literally a god. Nahida acts innocent, but she is not naive. She definitely does not act like a child either. And I think that's literally the point. It sort of comes across as her lack of experience is fueling her innocence rather than her being a child. This makes sense because she was locked up for like hundreds of years. Even though I'm not a fan, Nahida is a good example of this archetype done competently. So, what's wrong with the triple threat babies? A lot of things. I think the biggest reason is that Hoyoverse wants to have their cake and eat it too. Let us deconstruct the scene of Trinonne sacrificing herself to save Trianne and Tribbie. Well, obviously because Hoyoverse really wanted us to see it and feel something. Why else would it be featured in the 3.1 trailer? The scene uses several tricks to ignite a visceral emotional reaction from the audience. The lighting, composition, etc. But the thing I want to focus on is Trinonne and the fact that she looks like an innocent child. This scene would have not been as powerful as it is if it weren't for that. Most people feel extremely empathetic towards children suffering because most of the time, children are not responsible for the challenging circumstances they are stuck in. So when you set up a scene of a child literally sacrificing her life to save two other children, it's a cheat code to pull at your heartstrings. Basically, it's lazy writing. A turbo, evil, psycho villain kicking a puppy to show everyone that they're evil. Very evil. But then it's actually worse because Hoyo isn't even competent enough to nail this lazy hack writing technique. How sad a child is sacrificing themselves. Except Tribbie, Trinonne, and Trianne are not children and do not read as children. At all. We come to figure out that the triple threat babies came to be when Tribbios, aka Mother, accepted her fate as a demigod. Stealing the powers of Janus caused her to split into 1,000 pieces. Those pieces being little children clones of Tribbios. I know that they are not literally clones. I'm just trying to find a shorthand for whatever actually happened because surely this is not a Tribbios lore video. Here's the cherry on top. Invoking the power of Janus causes the children clones to regress both physically and mentally. Death is the ultimate consequence for those clones who abuse their powers. That's why only 3 of them remain, and Trinonne is to be regressed to her death if she invokes the power of Janus just once more. I am reiterating to make sure everyone understands, so sorry if this feels a little bit repetitive. Hoyo told us that these characters regress both physically and mentally, okay? But I'm going to showcase that they actually don't. It's untrue based on the character writing that we observe. There is this one scene where Trinonne and Tribbie are fighting over an old artifact. Trinonne wants to buy it because it reminds her of her homeland and therefore her mother. Look, children lack the neural pathway required to do any of the things that the triple threat babies are doing. Children do not have the capacity to fully describe what nostalgia is. Missing their homeland is such a complicated topic. They should not be able to communicate this clearly if they were truly regressing back to a child, quote unquote, mentality. People have studied developmental psychology. Okay, babies around the age of 4 cannot successfully pass the Sally Ann test. If you want to know more about it, I'll link a video for you to watch. Basically, it tests whether or not the child has a theory of mind. Here is an excerpt from Wikipedia.
In psychology and philosophy, theory of mind refers to the capacity to understand other individuals by ascribing mental states to them. A theory of mind includes the understanding that others' beliefs, desires, intentions, emotions, and thoughts may be different from one's own. It looks like Tribbie and Trinonne are around like 5 to 7. And because of my background in psychology, I find the character writing to be really, really awful, especially because they're pushing this notion of, oh, they're regressing. That's why Trinonne is so childish, because she's regressing. No, she's not regressing. She's just childish, okay? Children don't behave this way. And there is a huge difference between someone being childlike and childish. Adults can be childish, okay? They're not literally a child, right? Even if they're acting childish. What I'm saying is, you cannot have a character arc of physical and mental regression and also have characters that act nothing like children. Tribbie, Trianne, and Trinonne are normal, functioning members of society just like all the other adults, not children. You cannot orchestrate a scene involving an emotional moment that hinges on a child sacrificing herself, and that character to be not a child and not act like one. So, the triple threat babies are written by a hack, but surely their backstory is emotionally engaging, no? While I can understand how unfortunate their situation is, it wasn't enough to turn me around, especially because of how Tribbios is written. The Holy Maiden is such an accurate description of her in the worst way possible, because she's literally crucified into Mary Sue martyrdom. She tries to save the world and gets split into a million pieces, never once regretting her choices and looking after her clones, even after her sacrifice in a meta spiritual goddess Madoka is always with you, magical girls way. Actually, scratch that, because Madoka really struggled with her becoming a magical girl because she was afraid of what's to come. The 13 episode anime literally wholeheartedly focuses on her fear and how she overcame it. The story would not be so emotionally engaging without that context. And unfortunately, Tribbios' story is told without this context. We simply do not spend enough time with her to understand how this choice, her choice to become a flame chaser, was a turning point for her, or that it was somewhat remorseful or difficult for her. AKA, we're watching the last episode of Madoka Magica without watching the first 12 episodes. Anywho, how would I improve Tribbios' story? Well, first of all, I would have her appear more in the story, and rather than focusing on her sacrifice, which we already understand is noble and amazing, I want to focus on her human side. You know, I know that she was in confinement because of some political shenanigans, but like, what about before that? Show us Tribbios as a child, naive and kind and empathetic she may be, and show her doing stuff, and that she had other aspirations rather than becoming a flame chaser. But she gave up all that to save the world, or something like that. Just anything. And my apologies if this is mentioned in like a trailer or PV or anything like that. I think it should be in the game. And because this is a audio visual medium, I expect it to be in a cutscene or in a dialogue somewhere. Okay, not in a random lore book that I have to pick up to read. Another way I would improve the triple threat babies story is, I don't know, playing into the horror aspect of their entire character arc, that being regression, a flashback of some of the clones having a mental breakdown about regressing and gradually forgetting about themselves, would have been incredibly compelling. But we don't get that because Hoyoverse is inherently lazy. They don't understand developmental psychology. They don't understand psychological horror. Because if they did, they would have definitely made the correlation of regression to dementia. And we all know how dementia is terrifying. going from losing your memories to not recognizing your loved ones to completely breaking down and losing a sense of your own self. Absolutely terrifying. I am so afraid of getting dementia when I get older. And if they actually incorporated these aspects of regression in the story, I would have been so engaged. But I wasn't. They don't understand body horror, and they just don't understand that you should not be focusing on the sacrifices. You should focus on the context of that sacrifice. There is a reason why newspaper writers don't say, oh, X died. They say, a mother of 2 daughters died, because that short description gives us the context of 2 children now missing their mothers due to a tragic accident or something. Now, let's move on. Chapter 4, ending of 3.1. So, ending of 3.1 involves us, the player, helping Tribbios out of her confinement. Basically, Tribbios is trying to escape the NPC baddies who just want to use her for political power, and there are many hurdles in her way. We, the players, literally act as divine interventions to help her escape. I just hope that it's Phainon from the past helping her out, not literally a divine intervention. After we escape, we end up in this cutscene or an illustrated segment where they are revisiting the words, "See you tomorrow." This is a line that Trinonne says when she uses the power of Janus for the last time to save Tribbie and Trianne. This whole bit is the most pretentious thing I've seen in my life. Hoyoverse trying to give additional meaning to "see you tomorrow" as if they discovered the shape of the space-time dimension is the corniest shit. Actually, "see you tomorrow" shouldn't be taken literally. Those words carry figurative longing of the underlying wish, the yearning for tomorrow to come, even if it doesn't materialize.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
This isn't rocket science. People do this all the time. Like, after a real hard day, I say to myself, tomorrow is going to be a good day before going to sleep. Of course, I'm not saying it as a fact. I say it as a way of yearning for the statement to be true. What is this horseshit elementary school level of writing? Is this supposed to be touching? The fact that Hoyoverse is so on the nose about this is actually taking away from the little bit of emotional pull those words had in the first place. The entire ending was so childish, I had so much trouble actually focusing. I don't know, maybe I'm just broken inside. And I'm incapable of understanding basic human emotions. But this was so childish. God, like, it's so on the nose. Chapter 5, General Complaints. Number 1, unnatural exposition. Too many characters are just suddenly monologuing about their internal thoughts. This is super awkward and hallmark of terrible writing. Fix it, please. This happens a lot with Mydei and Phainon. I swear to God, Hoyoverse is actually allergic to show not tell. Genuinely. They're always talking, yapping. Oh, I feel this way. Oh, I feel this way. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, yeah, they should fix this. Next, number 2. I would appreciate more subtlety. I'm pretty bad at predicting things, but even I could figure out Phainon is the masked evil guy. If this was intentional, fine. We can scrap this point. Next, number 3. I mentioned this in my 3.0 review, but I still can't help but feel that the assets for the overworld of Amphorius looks really janky. It feels like a bunch of random assets slammed together. There is no cohesion, as if those assets were made by 10 different people and put together by someone in a hurry. The direction is all over the place. And I would believe you if you told me if the art director changed midway through the creation of these maps. Number 4, the political tension in this story is a joke. Like, we never get to see any of these quote-unquote council members that are actively trying to sabotage the flame chasers. It's always Aglaya or some NPC simply telling us that the council won't be happy of this or that or too fond of this. If Hoyo wanted to use them for a payoff at some point in the story, they should have built them up since 3.0. Instead, they've been hand-waving the council as this omnipresent force, even in the 3.1 story. And the fact that all playable characters are the flame chasers or adjacent parties, a huge problem. I don't think I can get invested in this political pull of power when all the playable characters are on one side and the other group of people are just NPCs. I will mention that the introduction of Anaxa was a breath of fresh air. He is the only one who is very antagonistic towards the idea of the whole flame chasing journey. And also, he has a very bad relationship with Aglaya, which I appreciate. Those two things have made him and Aglaya both more three-dimensional, so I really appreciated that. Anyways, as it stands, this whole political thing feels like a distraction rather than a political thriller that Hoyo thinks that they are writing. I will take my words back when we have some playable characters for the evil greedy council
faction that hasn't been even introduced yet. So yeah, that's it. Finally, I am done. I hope you enjoyed this video because it was a lot to put together, and I'm going to reconsider taking on such big projects now because they're so draining. Anyways, thank you for watching. Hope you have a lovely day. Drink water, stay healthy, exercise, go take a walk. Let's touch grass together. And yeah, cheers.